Hi, everyone. Welcome to AI Giants. I'm your host, Jam George, and today we have Dax Raad, creator of OpenCode and Zen, co-founder of Terminal, and one of the sharpest voices in AI coding. When Dax is not pushing the limits of terminal-first coding agents, he's a go-to thinker on what AI really changes and what it doesn't for developers. Hi, Dax.
Hey, glad to be here.
Before we start, a quick reminder to post questions in the Q&A section here, or if you're watching this through YouTube, LinkedIn, or X, we'll address as many questions as we can at the end. And so let's get started. The first question I have for you, Dex, how many Slack channels are you in right now?
Yeah, man, I love the Slack Connect feature because you can just collaborate with any other company, and I'm like collecting so many of them. Like we have, I feel like someone's gonna acquire us just to get access to to all the companies that we're connected with. But yeah, it's like doing open source work. A lot of it looks like connecting the dots between a bunch of different parties and getting everyone to like focus on a gap. And once I establish a relationship with someone, it's really useful just to have like a channel with them that we can kind of hop in and collaborate. A lot of stuff that you see that people see happening that we pull off, it's actually because we can do that. And I'm like, how did any of this happen before? You all have to be in the same city or something.
Um, what would you say are unexpected lessons that you could share from building the hottest coding tool, keyword being hottest, in one of the hottest spaces right now in the market?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, we've only been doing this for, I think we officially launched in July, so I guess it's been like 5 months or so. And we've like learned so much in that brief amount of time. Um, you know, we've been building stuff for developers for a long time, so a lot of this doesn't look any different. We understand there's like some interesting challenges of building things for developers. I think what people don't realize is that there's so many shapes of developers that exist out there. I think ballpark there's like 50 million of them in the world working on straight up tech companies that build software for other companies to like people working at an like a 70-year-old oil company that has software that they maintain, um, and like all this kind of crazy stuff in between. So building a good product for developers, it's hard because these environments are totally different, and you got to make something that works for the person trying to start a startup, but also works on someone's crazy lockdown enterprise laptop that's like super slow and like has like the worst
With a
experience you could
Java
possibly
monolith,
imagine.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's stuff that some people would consider totally unacceptable, but it's other people's day-to-day reality. So that's the part that's familiar to us. The coding agent stuff is interesting because it's new. Everyone in this space talks about it like they're some deep expert in it, but I feel like it's not old enough for anyone to really know what's going on. Um, yeah, so it's been interesting trying to like keep up with that, understand what's total bullshit, or like people are kind of going in a direction that makes sense technically, but like doesn't matter at the end of the day. Yeah, so juggling all that has been interesting.
And if we try to explore what's most difficult or challenging from building open code, what would you say?
Yeah, I think what's unique about this is, and I think this is going to be true for anyone building anything on top of LLMs. They're mysterious in a lot of ways. You might implement some way to wrap them to get them to do something, and you're like, "Oh wow, this improved things." But did it improve things? Like, did it improve the things that you tried? Someone else is going to try and be like, "Oh, this made stuff worse." But you also can't trust them because there's like some other variable that's messing it up. So it's really really hard to say we've improved something or like here's a problem and we fixed it. It's also extremely hard to evaluate across different options because people are fans of different products and they will see capability in them that doesn't really exist. And this is only possible because LLMs are so random and weird. So I've historically always been a big fan of anecdotes over data. I think you know people expressing how they feel about something is like a lot more useful generally. But that's been really challenged in this space because on one hand, I that's still true, but on the other hand, like I've just seen people hallucinating so much stuff into the products that just don't exist or like is not possible or is not relevant. Like even compliments for us, right? Like we'll get to this day, we still get people being like, "Oh wow, I tried OpenCode and Claude Code side by side, and like OpenCode's able to like really solve this difficult problem, and Claude Code didn't." But I know under the hood, they like more or less work the
Same
same way.
model.
So there's like some differences, of course, but on average, like you're gonna get the same like level of intelligence from both of them. But people like our UX, so they like see other capability into it that's not really there, and that's like very. I've never worked on anything like that.
And I think that's as we get deeper now into open code, I think that's a fascinating aspect because you have very contrarian or alternate views of how to build. You've been building dev tools for a while, and so I have a bit of a challenge as we think about one of the key principles of UX over model IQ is imagine you were forced to downgrade to a dumber model for a year, right? Following the principle you just said. What would you keep, change? What would you update? And you can change everything, right? Open code, not just the model. That would be dumber. What would happen if we nerfed the model for you?
Yeah, so I think we basically build assuming the models don't get much better, and I think they will. I think they're probably going to get better than we are optimizing for, but I don't think they're going to get so much better that it like fundamentally changes the product. So if you think about a dumber model, what that means is it needs more handholding, it needs more information, it needs more like fast feedback. Sorry, 1 second. Someone's calling me.
Okay.
That was annoying. He like went into my computer. Okay. So anyway,
We're doing this live.
yeah.
Let's go.
So it's all about like I am the person, I am gonna give it a task, it's gonna do something probably wrong or it's not gonna do it completely, and then I have to then reprompt it. And I need to give it a lot of information. That flow has nothing to do with AI, it has everything to do with good UX. I want to reference a file. Like, can I easily reference the file? I need to like reference an image. Can I drag and drop an image easily? Like when there's an error in when the AI introduces an error into a file, can like my LSP automatically detect that and like let the LLM know? So we really optimize for this. I'm in a flow state with the AI and we're like working back and forth together. So even if the model is dumber, those are things that you care about, right? Like being able to do that loop really fast in a product that feels good to use. It doesn't feel clunky. It doesn't feel like you're slogging through it. I think a lot of products out there kind of take the approach that, well, the models are going to keep getting better and better and better, so that like minute to minute experience does not matter as much, because eventually you're just going to like tell it a sentence and you're gonna come back an hour later and it's gonna be the perfect result. Which I'm not saying that doesn't happen. There are some things where I use the products in that way, but there's such a wide spectrum of the task I give it, the code base I'm working on, like super large code bases. The LLMs don't really do that good of a job working that aggressively. How old it is, how immature the code base is. So yeah, I think the models get dumber in these scenarios. So it's kind of like that is true. Like we are using a dumber model depending on the scenario you're in.
And so that fundamental focus on building an actual good product, regardless of the model, is what strikes me as fascinating as I try OpenCode as well. A question that I have is, OpenCode is known for being highly configurable for power users, and yet, how do you add advanced capabilities without making the experience overwhelming for first-time users that want to start using OpenCode?
Yeah, so this is the thing so I feel like in startups generally, people always present you with trade-offs like, oh, you can do this or you can do that, and you have to optimize for one. Every time you see a situation like that, the right answer is to somehow figure out how to do both, because that's what's hard. Everyone else is going to pick one or the other, and you're going to get average results. But if you can figure out how to do both without the seeming trade-off that everyone's claiming exists, that's when you like are kind of set apart from everyone else. When it comes to dev tools, this is a classic problem, right? You want to make it easier to build something. You want to make a product easier to use. The straight line way to do that is just to reduce capability and just have a great out of the box experience that just works. The thing with dev tools, and this is true for most products, but especially with dev tools, you never make money off of that initial experience. You make money when you can survive the company growing, stuff getting more complex. Because if your product can't scale to that, eventually someone ejects out of it and starts to use like the more serious option for the advanced situations that they will inevitably run into, right? We've all started off with something very simple, clean, and minimal in our own code bases, and it's turned into something. It always gets more complicated. So the way to approach this is it's harder. It's like harder up front, but it's a thing that ends up working long term. When you think to build a feature, like, oh, like this would be a really good feature to work out of the box, you don't just straight shot implement the feature. You think, what primitives do we need to build first that can be assembled into this feature? When you go in that direction, it's harder. It's like, it takes more time, and you have to think it's just a lot of effort. You can still give people a great experience because you implement those primitives. Then by default, you assemble those primitives into that nice feature. When they outgrow it, when they need to customize it, when they need to whatever, they're in a good position to now dig into that lower level and like assemble the primitives themselves in a nice way. I'll give you a very specific example of this. We have a really great framework for implementing subagents, just purely through configuration. Like you can build your own little agent that is like optimized to do certain things. And we built that framework first. Now there's all these cool ideas around, hey, when you want to search when the LLM needs to search a code base to find something, maybe you can use a specialized model for that. Maybe you can like give it different instructions. Maybe you can give it different tools. We're able to implement all of that just using our own thing, and that can come out of the box, right? We had a few features. Now that we're like in a more mature place, we've had a few features in the last couple of weeks where it wasn't really like a code feature. It was just shipping some configuration by default so that people get a good out of the box experience using the stuff that we already have. The other cool thing is the natural curve of all products is initially you have power users or people that are willing to put up with a more difficult onboarding experience. These people, if you give them the tools, they come up with cool ideas that you can then just absorb and like have work out of the box. So, honestly, like 9 out of 10 times, the thing that they come up with is like pretty specific to them and like maybe too crazy. But every once in a while, there is a really good idea that you would just kind of bake in by default.
If we talk about experience for developers that are used to either chat in a browser or use a coding agent in their IDE, what do you think is the huge upgrade that they're missing to start using a terminal tool?
Yeah, so my journey with this was probably helps understand this a little bit. So I was using my editor, so I use NeoVim. A bunch of these, so like, ChatGPT came out in the browser and I loved it. Like I used it all the time, like a lot of developers do. I always found it annoying, like, okay, I gotta like copy the code, paste it in there, ask it a question, iterate, get the result, and copy it back to the right spot. It felt annoying to me that the browser couldn't just like connect to my file system and read the files themselves and like write the files back. And like that always felt like a point of friction. And then Claude Code came out where it was like, yeah, it's that same thing that you have in the browser, except it's running in your terminal. So it has access to all the stuff that is on your file system. It can directly make the changes. You can chat with it there. That was a huge like breakthrough moment for me because up until then, I hadn't gone that deep into using AI for coding. Like I said, I use the browser apps, I use the autocomplete stuff, but it wasn't until that showed up that I was like, oh, okay, this is exactly what I want. Like the AI directly has access to the file system. They can do whatever I needed to. I can work on some stuff. It can work on other stuff in parallel. We can kind of combine our stuff at the end. So yeah, I think the idea is this whole like the whole challenge with LLMs is giving it the context it needs to do the job well, and then getting the results back. When it runs as its own agent, either in the terminal or wherever else, it can do those things much better. So I know some like Cursor, for example, has like their agent view, which is like a mix of both. It's okay in your IDE. and you have this whole agent experience. I've asked people a bunch, like, why do you use OpenCode? Like, why not just use the agent mode in Cursor? It's like very polished. It, like, there's some things it doesn't do super well, but I don't know if those things really matter that much. And because I've always been surprised by how much people use it. Because for me, it's very particular. Like, I love NeoVim and I don't want to give that up. And so this whole, like, I use NeoVim here and I use OpenCode separately makes sense. I didn't get why someone like uses Cursor or VS Code and also uses OpenCode. The answer I got was, and I think this does make sense. Some people like this like merging of the editor and AI all in one place. A lot of people find that really overwhelming. They like to feel like the editor's where I do my stuff. I want the agent doing stuff. I want to feel like it's doing stuff somewhere else. Yeah, and it's not like stepping over each other. So the feeling I describe is it's kind of like having someone right next to you with their own laptop, and every once in a while you're looking over their shoulder, seeing what they're doing, giving them feedback. Then you do your own thing, and they kind of look in their own place. So I think that's why this setup ends up being nice for people. I personally find that to be true. Like when I try to use Cursor, it feels like, wow. Well, one, VS Code is like a lot to begin with. There's a million features in there. Yeah, now there's like a bunch of AI features in there as well, and like there's stuff popping up everywhere. Totally get why some people like that, but it's just not for me.
That makes sense. At the same time, I think David has shared a tweet of a beautiful interface to start interacting better with OpenCode. Maybe we can see it popping up here very quickly. Yeah. Why start building an interface? What's the thought process behind it?
Yeah, I think there was a period of time where Cloud Code got successful, and then like our stuff came out and was doing well, and everyone kind of concluded, oh, the trick is terminals. Like we gotta like build and like every single person, every single company, bunch of new companies launched like a kind of half-assed like terminal app, but the idea isn't really about the fact that it's in the terminal. It's just that there was good UX, and like for certain audiences, this was like the best UX for the shape of product. And from the beginning, we did this on day one, which I don't think anyone else has done. We built OpenCode as a server client. So even though it was a single terminal experience, under the hood, there was like the back end, which was a server, and there was a front end, which was like the terminal UI, and that connected there. So we always intended that, hey, the server can have other clients. It can have a web client, a desktop client, a mobile client. The thing that I have learned from being in DevTools is, again, going back to this massive spectrum of developers that exist. Whenever I bring up problems and whenever I talk about like a trade-off that we're running into or like a situation that's not ideal, I'll get replies of people being like, oh, just tell people they have to do this, or just like don't support that use case, or don't support the thing that they want. But you can do that, but you're just never going to hit the whole market. So for us, it's always about however people want to consume this thing. We need to make sure that they have a nice way. Like I like the terminal UI. I probably will continuously use that for most of my stuff. But some people are going to like the desktop one. If the desktop one is also a web one, that allows like a lot of cool experiences that people can have without like installing or downloading anything. That unlocks a bunch of other stuff. So the work that we've always done, the underlying thing has always been like be everywhere, support everything, find a way to do that. Like everyone will tell you that there's trade-offs, but like kind of reject that notion, try to like meet people where they are and let them do exactly what they want, how they want to do it, even if you personally disagree. A lot of times like you'll see debates online about, you should use this editor, your workflow should be like this. And I see people arguing, and I'm just like, if you're actually building tools for this space, you actually don't get to have an opinion. Like having an opinion is for people that don't build stuff for developers. They can argue about it all day because they're trying to get their team to follow a certain workflow. Weirdly, when you're actually doing it professionally, you get less of an opportunity to have an opinion. You kind of just have to meet everyone where they are.
So I want to talk about Zen for a bit, because one of the things that has been amazing was the simplicity and flexibility of OpenCode. But I think when we started thinking, well, if we really want this to be simple, then we should also enable simplicity in the choice of models
Mhm.
for the user. So we'd love to know more about Zen's vision, and particularly why did you choose to run it as a break-even community service?
Yeah, so this actually goes back to what I was saying. With people believe that, oh, you can't do good out of the box and also be powerful. If you observe the order we did this stuff in, it's actually a great example of that. So initially, we built a system that you can connect like any provider. We like figured out how to do auth for everything. We had patterns around that. We had support for like, depending on the model you chose, we can like reconfigure OpenCode. It can run slightly differently to optimize for that model. Um, we built all of that, which is really great for people that are like, hey, my company already pays for Amazon Bedrock, and that's how we use Claude. So that's all I have access to. Great, you can use OpenCode. That's awesome. Or like, I'm a enthusiast. I want to try out like the newest model the day it comes out. OpenCode's your way of being able to do that. But for someone that doesn't have any of that, is maybe new to this, the first time they're even thinking about coding in this way or using this type of tool, way too overwhelming. Seeing a list of 75 providers, picking from them, figuring out what model to use, all very challenging. So now we need to layer in our own provider that kind of has the best choices built in, and kind of give you some information on how to choose. So like, yeah, if you want to, I think it's useful to have Codex and Claude models together. Signing up for OpenAI and signing up for Anthropic, setting up your keys in OpenCode, making sure your whole team does that. That's like a lot of work. So we're like, let's just build one inference provider, very much like OpenRouter. Like, we're not implementing our own models. We're just a gateway to access other models, and make sure that it's the best possible experience for each model. Especially for these open source models, there are like 100 providers that claim that they will serve these models. 90% of them are really bad. So we just kept seeing people try to plug in a random provider, have a bad experience, tell us that, oh, OpenCode's broken, but it's not. It's like they chose a provider that sucked, but they have no way of knowing what sucks and what doesn't. So a clear problem we needed to solve. And what's been fun about it is, so the second part of the question, like, why are we running it as break even? Inference is entirely like an economies of scale problem. The more demand you have, the more capacity you can buy. The more capacity you can buy, the cheaper the inference cost gets. The cheaper inference costs you can offer, the more people use your thing, and like kind of loops that way. So we wanted to maximize the chance that a lot of people were using this. And our numbers, like, Zen has been out for just 2 months, 2 to 3 months now. And we have like some, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but just like the amount of usage we're seeing is really crazy already. It kind of, if you look at some of the products that use OpenRouter, we're basically doing as much as most of them combined.
Wow.
So it kind of speaks to the value of this. And we're doing it at cost so we can maximize how many people use it, so we can drive down the cost. So we're at the point now where some of our open source models like GLM, we have literally the cheapest prices that exist out there for, I mean, our constraint is stuff needs to be hosted in the US. It needs to be like no data retention. Given those parameters, cheapest option for that. We're now selling GPT-5 for cheaper than OpenAI. Like, our prices are 15% cheaper. And it's like so obvious for us that, like, of course this is something that can be done. Of course we're going to do it. Weird that nobody else in the space is like we're just a team of 6 people. Like, it's not like we have dedicated people trying to make these deals or anything.
How does that work? How can you sell GPT-5 cheaper than them?
Yeah, I mean, I can't give you the exact specifics. We probably will share at some point, but at the end of the day, it is a crazy market right now in terms of the amount of money being put into providing inference, because the demand is insane. All of these big cloud providers are like, we know there's like billions and billions and billions of dollars available out there. Their margins are crazy right now. I think a lot of people are like, oh, like, everyone's losing money, blah, blah, blah. Inference margins are outrageous. Like, people make a ton of money serving inference, especially if you're like a big tech company like Google or Amazon or Microsoft. They have a lot of wiggle room in trying to capture market share right now. So if you are good at getting in there, finding the deals, like
Eyeballs, yeah.
getting the right people to like get excited about what you're doing, convincing them that you're going to have a lot of good growth. You can
Got it.
get these deals done. And I think our team is just kind of wired that
Good.
way.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can find the deals when they exist and pass it on to people. And again, the more people we have using Zen, the easier it is for us to do that.
Very cool. Some of the things that you've been very vocal about your distaste, potentially hate for benchmarks, of models. I wanted to ask you, how do you personally evaluate improvements in OpenCode or new models, and what do you find superstitious habits that you see developers falling into with AI, and maybe that they shouldn't learn?
Yeah, I think there's such a, like I said, the root thing here is these things behave randomly. And so you see like all this funny like human psychology that stacks on top of it, right? So you have a set of people that it's actually honestly the most industry is operating on like weird, almost like faith-based emotions around some of this stuff. I think like as engineers, we kind of look at something and our heads were like, oh, I can imagine how that works. So you start to assume that is how it works because it makes sense in your head. And you like layer off on top of a bunch of stuff, right? So there's a group of people that are like, oh, Anthropic makes the models and they make Claude Code. Therefore, Claude Code works the best with Anthropic and nobody could possibly ever beat them. And like logically, that makes sense. Like, of course, you can vertically integrate this stuff and maybe there's some benefits of doing that. But the question is, maybe there's some benefits of doing that. What's funny is, one, everything they're doing is observable. Like you can copy everything they're doing. Two, we see coding agents that do better with Claude than Claude Code.
Themselves.
Yeah. So like, how do you explain that, right? But also, me saying that is also for question. Like, do better when? Under what situations? Under what types of? Right. How do you even evaluate that? So it's such a noisy, crazy situation that anyone saying that ours is the best, or like we do better than this, or I like this tool over this tool because it is smarter, it's like made up. It's like never like a real thing. I think historically benchmarks have been extremely bad because I feel like they were just made up by researchers or academics. Because if you look at some of the benchmarks and you see what they're actually testing, it'll be like some weird coding puzzle in like a 3-file repo being like, hey, implement this thing. Or like, it's like stuff that does not look like my day-to-day work. It'll just be like academic challenges. And so much of what's cited is that. It doesn't use the languages that I'm using. It doesn't do the work that I'm doing. It's not operating in like realistic environments and realistic code bases. And there's so many companies that like will optimize. Well, like it's not hard to like rig your stuff to get to the top of those benchmarks. They'll do that and they'll like market that. I like immediately distrust anyone that does this because if you look at the benchmark, you know, just as I know, it's not realistic or it's not useful. If you're choosing to market it by being like, "Oh, we're number one on this benchmark," it's like kind of an intentional thing. And I feel like I'm not even saying, oh, like they're bad or like they're being dishonest. I think you're fooling yourself. Like you start to look at those benchmarks and you might think like, oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm optimizing for them, but I don't take them that seriously. That's not how it works. Like you start to convince yourself that that's what you should be optimizing for. So I'm like very hesitant to like get into that game because it poisons my own ability to kind of see clearly. That said, we are working on our own set of benchmarks for the things that we try to care about. It was actually pretty interesting because so we haven't made them public yet, but we kind of settled on an approach that we found, okay, this makes sense. The client team just shipped or like they announced their benchmarks, and they landed on almost the exact approach, like identical approach, which felt really good because I'm like, okay, they're like a lot deeper into thinking about some of that stuff, and for like a separate party to land on the exact same stuff, it's a good validation that we're landing on something that's real. So our benchmarks focused on, we look at a lot of commercial open source projects. If you take something like Sentry, all their code bases are public, very mature code base, very big. We can look at actual PRs that they've done give those to the LLM and try to see how close to the actual thing that was shipped it got. And that's how we are trying to benchmark things. So basically checking like, if you gave this task to an agent, did it actually do what was actually shipped? So it's like real. It's not made up. It's not contrived. It's not academic. So we're like building a data set of those scenarios and running benchmarks across not only different models, but like I said, open source models. It's a model provider combo. So take an open source model like GLM. How does it do when it's hosted by Fireworks? How does it do when it's hosted by Base 10? How does it do when it's hosted by Deep Infra? So we have that problem to try to improve our own stuff. We're going to try to make it very consumable for the end user. All these benchmarks are just like random numbers on a bar chart. And you're like, okay, I guess the bigger number means it's good, but you don't really know what it means or how it's testing. You can't like dig into it. So we're going to try to focus on that side of things as well.
This opinion that benchmarks might be a way to fool yourself makes me think that somehow may be connected with the red alert from OpenAI that we've heard in the last few days. Maybe they've been resting a bit on their own benchmarks and now they're worried.
Yeah, I think the one thing I'll add there is there's kind of this paradox, right? Like what I just said is when you use these products naturally, it's very hard to like quantify their behavior. You can't get a sense of when they're doing well or which one's better than the other. So then you go and create benchmarks to try to extract that information out and like understand what's actually going on. But like the innate truth there is without the benchmark, the end user can't tell what's good or what's bad. Right. So making it better and that improvement showing up only on benchmarks, the end user can't see that anyway. So it's kind of like once you pass a bar of like, this is roughly as good as something else, the user cannot tell that one agent is doing better 15% of the time on like code bases that look like this. So that's why I mean fooling yourself. Like you start to think that if I do better on these benchmarks, I'm going to get more
I'll have
users.
The best product.
Yeah, the best product, and I'll get more users and all that stuff. But people can't tell. Like they literally can't tell at all. And that's why we need the benchmark in the first place. So that's why I don't like. We need to do this, but it's not what's going to determine whether we win or lose.
As we think about the AI market also, as we're now kind of touching on it now, one of my favorite sentences that you've said is that developer workflows are in flux because we've heard loud and clear for lots of different leaders saying that software engineering is over and it's done and go kind of be an electrician now. Where do you think this is all heading? Like, you know, I like the nuanced approach of saying that this is in flux and we'll see what happens, right, in the next few years. But what do you think, based on your experience, and you've been working on DevTools for a long time, what do you think we're going to look back in 5 years and feel like perforated cards? What do you think this will all look like in some time?
Yeah, I think people... this is a thing where I'm like, there's cases where you should use your brain and there's cases where you shouldn't. Because if your brain isn't smart enough, you come to kind of like stupid conclusions. So if you look at people, okay, I'm going to think from first principles. Code is getting cheaper to generate. We can generate more of it. In the past couple of years, that the models have improved by some measurable whatever. Given those things are true, my brain tells me, hey, that means if you go 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, we're going to be in like it's going to do everything perfectly. And it's going to like kind of continue on this pace. But there's so many like second order effects. It's like a very complex thing. It's not just about the technical code. There's like organizational realities. There's just so many variables and dynamics here that I don't think anyone that is truly like good at seeing like a noisy thing and figuring out what's right. Anyone that I respect that is good at that is not making any predictions right now, because it's clear that the prediction isn't even the right way to look at this. It's more about, I think for me, I'm just looking at it as like, we have to like forget about the future. That's the way I'm looking at it. I'm not trying to like forecast a year or 2 years, whatever. I'm just looking at my day to day. Like, how do I make today a little bit easier than yesterday, and kind of like iterate on these things and try to solve just the next problem at a time, do things that are useful. I'm I find that a lot of those things aren't AI related. They're just like normal good product related, like make stuff easier to configure, or like make the onboarding flow a little bit nicer, like lower the friction here. It's not really like, oh yeah, like the AI has gotten smarter and that's changed my day to day. So I don't really buy into some of those things. I think the other first principle I have is I've just seen this so many times across like the different areas that I've worked in. The closer you are to like the middle of everything that's happening, the worse your predictions get. It's like a counterintuitive thing it's like a well-studied phenomena. Like if you are a researcher working in the research labs, you're actually more likely to make a prediction that's way off base. The confounding thing is your level of confidence is like off the charts for your prediction. So if you like make a prediction and we ask you to score how confident you are, you're going to be really confident and it's like probably not going to happen. So I've seen this happen so many times where this exact scenario has happened. So when I see these like predictions come out from these big labs, I kind of know what's going on. I kind of like know the psychology that's driving them to do this. They're all really smart. A lot of them are smarter than me. But the whole challenge with building anything, figuring out what's useful, is to kind of keep your brain clear and like ingest the stuff that helps you think clearly and avoid the stuff that's confusing. It's very hard to do that the closer you are to like the middle of it all. So I personally avoid getting into certain areas because I know that it kind of poisons my ability to think clearly. So yeah, I have a hard time. Like I to some degree, I am in the middle of all this and I get excited and I see where things are going. Then the other side of me thinks back to like some of the gigantic companies that I have consulted for, have used our products, and thinking about how like they have like a team of 100 where it seems like nobody's really doing anything and nothing is getting done. And it seems like only 3 people are actually like doing the work, and everything takes like so much longer than you is like reasonable. And like, yeah, you drop AI to that space and like nothing changes. Like it has nothing to do with like there's already like programmers that are like 10x better than anyone they have. You drop that programmer in there, nothing's still going to change because that's not where the bottleneck is. Like these things don't change overnight super easily. There's so many variables. So I have this hard time imagining like, oh, overnight change or even like change within 5 years, because there's so many other problems that are not related to the literal code.
Is there any prevalent wisdom in AI or in the software world that you feel is completely wrong or just overhyped? What, in other words, what do you believe in that maybe other people in the industry wouldn't agree with you necessarily?
Yeah, so I think the recent thing has been so there's a few degrees. There's a few things I can think of. So one is this whole idea around agents that run for a long time. Oh yeah, I give it a task. It's going to take 2 hours for the LM to like spin its wheels and like get to the right place. Who cares how long it takes? Because I can just let it do its thing. I can like spin up 6 of them. I can have them doing 6 things at once. I think that's partially true in that there are some tasks where, particularly if I have like a bug where I've like been able to document kind of when it happens, but I can't figure out why because it's very deeply intricate. Great thing I kick off to Codex through OpenCode, and I will just, it might take like 30 minutes, it might take an hour, and it'll come back to me with its findings. And oftentimes, like, wow, like it found the exact problem and we're able to fix it. So I don't deny that these long running things are like a thing sometimes, but I think people singularly focus on that as like that's like the way that all these coding agents are going to operate and all tasks are going to flow that way. You're just going to be someone like kicking off tasks to it, and it doesn't matter if it's slow, like it's going to come back with the perfect result. There's a lot of people optimizing for that. A lot of these like background agents setups are like really optimizing for that future. I don't know about that. I think there's some things that do fit into that. I think there's a lot of things that I want to stay in the flow for. I want to have rapid feedback for. If you look at Cursor's new model, Composer, that's kind of what they've optimized for. So yeah, I don't think it's like singular the agent is a person that goes and works forever without your input thing. The other thing is, I think people really overestimate their ability to multitask. The sinister thing about multitasking is it feels insanely productive. Opening up like 8 copies of Claude Code and giving it tasks and seeing on your screen like all them going,
I'm being so
that
productive right
feels
now.
amazing. Like you feel like you're getting in on something that nobody else can do. But these people, they never ship anything. They literally never ship anything that I care about. None of the products that I love are like I see them post that. I never see them post the thing that is really
The
useful.
product itself, yeah.
Right. So I think people overestimate their ability to multitask. I have been working in kinetic startup environments forever, especially in open source where we serve like a public community. That's like I get messages like constantly, getting tagged on Twitter constantly, tagged on Discord constantly, just reacting to stuff all day. It's like really chaotic. I get very little like focus time. So I'm someone that in theory is good at doing all this. But if even I'm saying like, yeah, juggling a lot of stuff is not productive, like I think that kind of speaks to not, yeah, like you can think you're paralyzing a bunch of stuff, but I bet if you did it sequentially with a faster model, it would probably end up being net more productive.
And on the other hand, in terms of prevailing wisdom, what do you think is not getting enough love or attention? What should be kind of, please, now more than ever, please pay attention to this?
Yeah, so this is kind of jumping off of what I said earlier. The thing that's frustrated me so much about working in like building stuff for developers is the whole community, developers, like everyone, the pattern we fall into is showing the how or like obsessing on the how and assuming that, oh yeah, there's like a good outcome at the end of it. So like the previous generation of dev tools was all around like, how do you build front end? Like what frameworks do you use? Like what infrastructure do you use? And everybody kept showing off like, hey, look how this code looks. Look at this like feature in the framework. Look at all this stuff. And the entire discussion stems from there. And to me, this is like totally backwards. I think anytime someone has influenced me deeply in how I build things, it's because I saw their product and I was like, wow, this product feels like 10x better than anything I can possibly build. It's better than any other product in this category. What an amazing outcome. I'm interested in learning how they did it, learning the technicals, like learning both like how the team is organized, like how the company works, what their culture is. Going in that direction makes a lot more sense to me. Show me the amazing thing you built first. Make people ask, that's so good, I need to know how you did it, and then go into your process. So I feel like it's totally flipped right now where everyone is showing off, like, again, going back to this, I got like 10 Claude codes running. But like, what did you actually build? Like, start with that. Like, be someone where I'm like, wow, they're shipping so much more than I can. They're out shipping our team. It's such high quality. Like, how are they able to do all this? Like, make me like have those feelings, then show me like how you do it, right? So I think we're all guilty of going the other direction a lot because it's a lot easier to just talk about like the how without like actually having to do the actual
outcome,
thing that
yeah.
matters. Yeah. So I feel like there's just not enough people or not enough much credit given to people doing things in that direction. It also filters a bunch of stuff. Like I think there's been a lot of like fake directions the industry has gone in because we got so hyped on the how, and it turns out it doesn't actually lead to anything useful. And a lot of time and money and energy is wasted on that.
Makes sense. I think a final question before we get to our Q&A with anyone. By the way, if anyone wants to ask questions, please go ahead. We'll make sure to try to get them. Is what's a spicy take you posted on X about AI or dev tools that you've completely stand by, and what's one that you change your mind on?
Oh, okay, interesting. One that I changed my mind on. The thing I think the thing I said earlier about this making things easy for initial adopter and like making it work for large teams, that's just not a trade-off. And anyone that's saying that it is, they're just inexperienced and they just don't have the capability to pull that off. So they see it that way. And that's the thing that I strongly believe. I also think this thing that I'm saying about you don't get to have a lot of opinions.
I like that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I think if you want to build something that a lot of people use, it's always good to build something a lot of people use. Like you get to do like way more fun stuff when you do have a large user base. That's a mindset you have to adopt. Like you can't really get into like I disagree with the way people use my stuff all the time. Being someone that's like constantly like prescriptive or like scolding people for using my stuff wrong, you're just not gonna get to a good outcome come doing that. And I think a lot of people, like developers, feel like every developer feels like they can make things for other developers because we're all programmers, we can all build stuff, we understand our problems. The reason so few can is because so few are willing to like strip down their opinions to being like 1% of what they currently feel. It took me a while to like get there too. I wasn't like this from day one. In terms of what I've changed my mind on, that's a good question. It's probably bad to say that nothing jumps to mind right away. That seems like a poor reflection on myself, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely things. It's just not jumping. I think this probably isn't related to developer stuff, but I think when ChatGPT first came out, I was like, this is really awesome, and I love it, and I'm like going to use it a ton. I had a hard time seeing how it displaced my habits around Googling for things, and I specifically wanted. I felt like ChatGPT was initially good for when I had like a broad question that like I didn't really know what I wanted. But I had this feeling that if I was looking for something very specific, they're gonna have a hard time like reducing my Google habits. But they definitely confused me entirely. I think they've gotten that far where now I'm like randomly going to Google and like randomly going to ChatGPT, and I feel like maybe like less productive than when I only had Google. So they've definitely successfully displaced something. I don't think I've landed yet in a place where I'm like, okay, I'm in a better situation than before, but they have done the very difficult thing of like displacing this very rigid habit that I think a lot of people have had. So I think I was kind of wrong and how I felt that, okay, this is going to be really hard or basically impossible to do.
Yeah. To be fair, I don't even think they thought it would be so impactful.
Yeah.
So, great. Well, I think it was a very nuanced conversation and with a lot of insights. And now I would love to jump into some of the questions. And I already see that we have a champion, Amit, with lots of different questions. We'll try to go as many as possible here. Let's start from the bottom. I've seen posts recommending Tune, protobuf, message pack to reduce input tokens. Does it really work, especially when LLM providers count the token after the prompt has been processed and translated into strings?
Yeah, so this is one of those things where it's a great example of how hard it is to evaluate whether making a change works, and a great example of people following their beliefs versus actually like doing anything. So there's people that are like, again, as engineers, you think about how the models work. We feed the LLMs tons of input data, and they learn how that works. So obviously, the LLMs have seen a lot of JSON. They've seen a lot of XML. They've seen a lot of these like old formats. So introducing a new format like Tune is, people believe that there's no way that could be better because the LLM has never seen that before. And people will get to like really strong debates where they strongly believe that. That said, the people that built Tune have a bunch of benchmarks showing that, hey, actually, it seems like the LLM is doing things better. But of course, benchmarks, how is that enough to go off of, or like, does that mean we should be switching to it? Also, the whole point of LLMs is they can understand stuff that they haven't explicitly seen before, because that's what intelligence is supposed to be, right? Like generalizing stuff you've seen before to stuff that you haven't seen before. So why shouldn't an LLM deal with a new format well? So the answer here is it's confusing and nobody knows. I asked this the other day because I was like, there's a lot of places where, initially building OpenCode, I just JSON data because I'm just like, I'll deal with this later. I'll look into this later. Now I'm kind of looking into this. I'm like, should I use Tune? Should I use these other smaller formats? And I don't know. I don't have a clear answer. Like it's very confusing. I think my thinking is like, yeah, they've reduced input tokens, but they're not like making things like 50%
10
cheaper.
times
They're making
cheaper.
things like, yeah, they're making things like in some case, like net across all the cases, like 1 or 2% cheaper. So I'm going to choose right now to not do anything because it's not obvious if it's helping or not. I'm sure at certain scales it becomes a lot more of a problem, but I don't think the end user cares about a 1 to 2% change in their costs with the question of, am I making things worse or am I going to confuse it, being so unanswered.
How does OpenCode handle multiple file dependencies in large code bases, and how does it refactor code when handling such dependencies?
Yeah, so this is where agents are quite good at figuring out context. So you ask it a question and it'll like grep on its own and like search your code base to figure out what files matter. This is also a great example of why I think a lot of people interpret this LLM stuff as, oh, LLMs can generate code. It doesn't matter what the code looks like. So it can just generate nonsense. We can just always pump the LLM and it's going to be able to figure it out. That's not actually true. LLMs perform way better in well-organized code bases, right? If you have a really good file structure, a really good hierarchy where different components of your code base are organized properly, just by looking at the file tree, you can get a sense of where things are and you can guess for this functionality, it's probably in this folder. That's good for a human. It's very good for an LLM too. So better, more organized code bases, the better it is at finding that. In terms of like dealing with like changing something in one file and breaking it somewhere else, this is where I think OpenCode is one of the only coding agents that does this. It has built-in support for LSPs, nothing to install, nothing to set up. So it knows if it changed a function name somewhere, it gets feedback. Here's everywhere else that you've broken it, and it can then respond and react to them. It's another reason why typed languages tend to do better with LLMs, because again, they can get that. Just like a user, like a human benefits from typed languages, an LLM benefits too, because it can be told deterministically, here's what you've broken, go fix it.
Okay. Miguel Fernandez asks, do you think self-hosting models is an economical choice for tech companies wanting to leverage coding agents versus the efforts to set them up?
Yeah, so there's a whole spectrum on how to do this, and there's companies serving all different points, right? You have the totally not self-hosted version of like, I'm going to go to OpenAI, I'm going to pay them, and they're going to, that's how we're going to get our inference. This is where you're going to be paying the most to some degree, right? Because they're also at huge scale, so they can kind of offer competitive prices. Then there's the big cloud providers who you probably already have an account with, and they all have built-in inference. You're not fully self-hosting it, and you're not like managing the hardware, but it now looks more like a service that exists inside your own system versus an external service. And these cloud providers, they're in fierce competition with each other. You're going to see them drop prices and be pretty aggressive with all that stuff. So that's like semi-self-hosted, right? Then you have the companies that are like very sensitive to not having any data leak out. These people will have their own hardware, manage their own inference. Today it is really difficult to have efficient inference. If you look at the companies that are competing with these big cloud companies offering inference with open source models, they do some really, really crazy stuff to get their stuff to be cheap and economical. It is like a full-time team. They need to be thinking about this stuff to get it working well. Stuff is constantly changing. Like new models are coming out that need different things. It's also just like I said, a scale thing. The more inference demand you have, the cheaper you can offer it. So I think it's going to be pretty hard for you to self-host it, even as like a serious enterprise, to self-host it in a way that is economical, that isn't like weird overhead for you to figure out how to hire these like experts at inference that they just don't exist right now because they're all at these companies doing inference full time.
All in Meta, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a very weird thing. That said, there are a bunch of OpenCode users that are these companies that are self-hosting it. They're willing to kind of accept some of these downsides, and they maybe already have they've already like bought the hardware for this for other reasons, so they can kind of repurpose it for this use case. Yeah, I'm always like, I think people think of this. People think of like renting as like a scam. Like, oh, they bought the hardware and now they're charging us something that is cheaper for us to buy ourselves. But man, it is such a competitive market that they are in this brutal arms race with all these other companies trying to do this efficiently. You jumping into that game, it's pretty hard. Like hardware depreciates, like next gen hardware comes out. Like, what do you do with the previous gen? They got to like rotate it out, like sell it to someone. Like, that whole pipeline is just a nightmare. That doing that to save some money, I don't know. It's like, it's kind of questionable. I get like the data sensitivity thing to some degree, but from a purely economics perspective, yeah, I'm not too sure about that.
Ahmed is here asking a lengthy question, but a good one about people switching from editor-based coding to more spec/requirement, starting from a requirement or a spec writing. And so, how do we deal with the initial requirements? How much requirements and details do we need to start pushing, asking our agents to do some work? And how does OpenCode deal with this?
Yeah, so this is actually an area that OpenCode does not do well currently. It's going to kind of our next area of focus. There is this flow that some people enjoy and makes sense for some amount of work. So you basically try to create a plan that deeply outlines a task, and then you kind of start fresh with the agent and just give it the plan and have it execute. What's fun about this is you can work with the agent to build that initial plan. So you can have it, you can tell it kind of what you want, you can have it do the research, poke around files, figure out what needs to change, establish what you want done with it up front before you actually have it make any changes. This is that like plan then build flow. So we do have a plan mode, we do have a build mode. These are kind of like not deeply implemented features yet, so we're going to work on that next. So I think the tools themselves will get better at helping you build the spec. So Claude Code asks you questions. They're like, okay, you're saying you want this, but here's 3 ways you can do it. Like, which one do you want to do? So some of these things are pretty nice. This is going to be probably our next area of focus. Like I said, it doesn't mean with all these things, like, I think what I'm seeing is, given how much investment and excitement there is about AI, you kind of get entire companies dedicated to like these singular approaches. And they kind of want to push the narrative that this approach is a universal approach and it's going to be what you do all the time. So if you're a company that makes background agents, you're like, all your work's going to be done through background agents. If you're a product that really focuses on the spec flow, you're like, everything you do is going to be the spec flow. I think ultimately it's not. I think it's going to be a bunch of new tools we have in our toolbox, and depending on what you're doing, it's going to make sense to use one versus another.
We're on time, and I have space and time for one final question. I'm going to choose this one from a user from YouTube that I think connects beautifully with what you just said, which is, what is then the correct way to use OpenCode?
Yeah, so I think the funny answer to this is I am waiting for our users to tell me. If you see how I operate, like everything we do is extremely public. We share stuff halfway through. Whenever I get stuck, I'm like, we can do 3 different things. Like I usually put a poll out there to figure out how people are using it. There's just so many different personalities in the way people use it. Like I use it in like this very hand-to-hand way where I'm like working alongside of it for some things. For other things, you know, I go more async. We're so early in all this. I think we're all just personally discovering, like, given our team, how we operate, given how our code base is mature versus not mature, how messy it is, different things are going to make sense. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the correct way to use OpenCode is don't expect it to solve, or don't expect any of these tools to like replace software engineering. Figure out how to layer it into your code. Be very honest with yourself about productivity. I think all these tools, OpenCode itself, can fool you into thinking you're being more productive than you were before. But if you take a step back and you're really honest about it, you'll find that, hey, sometimes the old school way of just doing stuff manually is actually not just faster, but there's some work where the process of doing the work manually is how you even figure out what needs to be done. Expecting the AI to somehow take that off your plate is not going to happen, right? So I think I was kind of encourage everyone to like be honest about the productivity stuff, and you can feel like you're productive when you're not. Like any new workflow feels productive initially, but a month in you kind of realize like, oh, that was just the novelty that felt good.
I think you guys should rebrand yourselves as the honest coding agent. I think that'll be a good marketing
Yeah.
slogan.
I think what's been so funny to me is you imagine that you're like working in a space, you're excited about it, and you spend all your time trying to convince people to be excited about it. AI is so crazy right now that my job feels inverted. I feel like I'm working on coding agents, and I spend more time talking about like, hey guys, don't like fall for like how this like extreme view of them. Like I feel like I'm like arguing against the thing that I'm doing a lot more than what I expect to be doing. So yeah, just weird times with how hyped stuff is.
Dex, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the patience to answer our questions. And that's our show. Today we went
Yeah,
behind the scenes with building OpenCode with Dax Raad. I hope you had as much fun as I had. Here's a small CTA. There we go. Tell people to check in OpenCode, which is a wonderful, transparent, honest product that just kind of stands for everything good in software engineering. So please use it. As always, Codacy is an end-to-end solution for building products securely. In 2 days, we're going to have our showcase where our engineering team is going to present everything that we've been building for you, particularly our AI risk and AI reviewer. Yeah, join us next time where we talk to some of the leaders of AI coding. And please stay tuned. Follow us. And again, thanks, Dex, for joining in. Thanks for all the questions as well, everyone.
cool. Appreciate it.